So welcome back to the 42284 podcast, otherwise known as Uncle Kyle's radio show. A little shout out to Brooks, Kyle's nephew. I hope he's listening. And Brooks, if you are, and you need a new prank for Mama, get you a black hair tie, put it around the squirter on the sink, ask her for a cup of water. Works every time. So we're coming to you from the She Shed in beautiful downtown Sunfish, Kentucky.
I had a little feedback from the last episode.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Kyle is going to have to clarify. I heard that some of the details we gave on the kidnapping wasn't exactly right.
I think I heard that. Anybody want to?
Can you clarify?
I mean, nobody wants to fess up to what they know, but maybe that we weren't spot on our recollection of it.
Maybe I'll just wait till I go to Florida next year and then just go ahead and add a
Now,
little more
Kyle,
to it.
You have to admit that's funny to get your sister on here without you knowing.
I mean, I'm still pulling the knife out of my back, boys. I thought we was tighter than that.
We've got Brian Alexander in the studio with us today. Brian is he's older than us, but we grew up with him and his family, and he been a big part of our life. I think you helped Chris Raymer coach a Little League baseball team of mine when I was a kid. And,
I did. I sure did.
Yeah. Basketball superstar in Edmonson County. Currently the superintendent of Edmonson County Schools.
Yes, sir.
Big shoes to fill, big role.
I am. Kevin runs for office, and I run the schools because it's not an elected position because I couldn't get 12 votes. I couldn't get any votes.
Well, you'd get 2 here, and I would vote for you if I could.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
We'd get some election whiskey going, as they used to say. We'd get a few votes for you.
I used to hear stories back when the voting house was down there. Of course, I'm older, so I know a different set of stories than Kevin does. But I remember hearing stories about the whiskey getting passed around down here at the old voting house and finding out who fell in the fire.
Yeah.
By the way, somebody was falling in the fire down there.
You know, that's funny you mentioned that. I'd forgot about the voting house. When I was a kid, I don't know if you all remember this or not.
I can remember going to the voting house.
The voting house was at the end of Sunfish, Sunny Point, and 187. Yeah. Is it still? It's still there, isn't it? And that was a community event.
Oh, big time.
I mean, there was crafts and cookouts, and it was a community event. It was election day. It's a shame that doesn't happen like that anymore. I don't know if you could do that anymore.
They've too many. It's the elected guy over here. He knows all the election laws, but I'd say that they all the fun's been taken out of everything at this point in the world. Right. Sure has.
Let me tell you a funny story I heard from a local guy years ago. I won't mention any names because I would hope the statute of limitations is passed, but I'm not for sure on that.
Okay.
But he told it himself, so I know it's true. It was back in the days when they would pass around a little whiskey for people's votes. And his brother-in-law was going around to the polling precincts. It's election day. And he sees some guys. I think this was over by Kyrock's voting precinct, if I've got the story right.
Okay.
It could not have been. And there was a couple of boys out there, and he noticed a car would stop, talk for a few minutes, go on. Another car would stop, talk for a few minutes, and go on. So he goes up there, and the brother-in-law goes up there and checks it out. And sure enough, they're passing out whiskey for votes. So he promptly calls the sheriff and gets them removed from that place, and pretty proud of himself, and gets to a phone. Of course, that's back before cell phones and things like that. Gets to a phone and calls his brother-in-law, tells him what he's done, who he's got arrested, who he's got run off. And the brother-in-law says, "Jimmy, them was our boys." So you need to make sure you know who's who before you go to enforcing the laws.
That's funny. Well, going back to your sister, I told her she was a kid. She was a little kid when I kind of moved away from Sunfish. And so I didn't really know her that well. And so, but I tell you what, when she walked in and 2 minutes of talking to her, it was like sitting here talking to your dad.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she's got the personality, which you got the personality too, but she's got the look too.
Yeah, she looks just like him.
So much of Gary.
Yeah.
And, which is not a bad thing, but
so some of the stories that she was telling on there, and first of all, I love my sister and she loves me, so don't anybody out there think that we're sibling rivalries or anything like that. But when she was little one time, of course, Dad passed away when she was 20 months old. She said,
yeah, that's what
she said too, but she wasn't hardly 2 years old. They would do these infomercials on TV selling cassettes and this and that, all back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that or not. And there was an Elvis one on there. And she comes running there to Mom and says, Mom, Dad's on TV. she thought Elvis, of course, that jet black hair, kind of dark complexion.
Yeah.
So she thought Dad was Elvis.
Yeah, your dad, his skin tone was probably from farming and natural, and Elvis probably been laying out on the beach somewhere.
I'd say so.
I can see that.
Yeah,
I can see
I'd
that.
say
You know,
so.
I've had several people text me and call me and say that, you know, the fact that you told everybody she was a little Mexican child and was adopted, that may be one of the funnier things they've heard. So, good one. I would have done the same thing.
It kind of took on a life of its own. I think I texted you guys maybe after I'd listened to the episode, and so years after this, Kayla's grown, and we're over at the station working, and I don't know if you guys know Andrew Doyle. You know Andrew,
yeah.
Jerry's boy.
Yeah.
Taz, we called him. Top 3 gas pumpers I ever had all time. One of the best.
Gas Pump Hall of Fame.
Oh, I'm telling you what, I've got a list. He's
Mount
on
Rushmore.
He's one of the greats. And I pulled up there in my truck. Heather had called in some food over at Mis Amigos, and I'm just sitting there waiting. Well, he promptly, just comes over to the truck. And I roll the window down. He says, "Hey, you need anything? Is everything okay?" I said, "Oh, yeah, everything's fine. I'm just waiting on a little Mexican." He said, "Is Kayla coming up here?" I said, no, a little Mexican food from the Mexican restaurant.
Oh my goodness!
So yeah,
that is great.
That started out as a little joke, but I just had to go with it.
It's known countywide, is what you're saying.
I hope, he's got a list of the gas pumpers. I hope with my little bit of time over part-time in the shop, I hope I fall in there somewhere in that list just under Charlie somewhere.
But Bub's the best 1 week help all time.
Really?
Yeah. He thought he had just a little trouble on a rear end, but it all turned out okay.
Some guy calls one night. I've put brakes on a truck, and had the rear end, had the axles out and stuff, put seals, and calls and says, "Well, I got to come get you. We got to go get this truck." Said they've run a wheel off over. I said, "You're kidding me? No, axle come
So
off."
it was the one you just put on.
Oh, yeah. Had me ready. I mean, I was done getting my clothes on before he called me back and told me, "No, I'm just kidding."
That's funny. So, Brian, what year did you graduate high school?
I graduated from high school in 1988.
88.
Yeah.
I remember you playing ball over there. I was a little dribbler. Did you make the little dribbler team? Do you remember that? When
No. I played some Little League basketball. I played on a team, I think, that you and Chris coached.
May
best
have.
I remember.
Yes. May have. Baseball?
I played baseball and basketball, too.
Did y'all play with Steven and Josh Raymer and Jonathan Bevel and all them?
Yep.
We won the league that year.
Didn't Bill help y'all coach, too?
Yeah.
We were the A's.
I got pulled in at the last minute on that. Uncle Bill called and said, we need some help. And he could be there part of the time. Chris could be there part of the time. And I was young, didn't have a whole lot going on, so I just jumped in there and helped. And I remember we were the surprise winners of the league. We'd put Steven out there on the mound, and he's throwing sidearm about half wild. And then Stanley Taylor would come in and pitch.
Yep.
And he'd throw that Anthony over, looked like almost an eephus pitch, and that they never could get adjusted to those changes. And we won the whole league.
I played against Stanley Taylor one year. I don't remember. I think I played for
you and I were on the same T-ball team, the Yankees.
We played for the Yankees, and we didn't lose a game
Bobby
that year.
Alford coached us that year.
And so then I played on Joey Blanton's Dodgers team one year with his son Joseph, who pitched and hit and played big league. I mean,
World Series.
World Series, yeah.
Hit a home run in the World Series.
Yeah, hit a home run in the World Series. Man, that's big stuff around here. And then after that, I played with you all.
You was talking about little dribblers. I got a story. Go ahead and finish.
Well, I was going to say Stanley Taylor. When I played that year for Joey, Stanley was on another team. Stanley and I graduated together, and we're good friends. But he would throw some kind of sidearm. I don't even remember. But he popped me at that ball one time right behind the I was turning and hit me right there below that shoulder blade, and that may be the most pain I think I've ever. And it didn't look like he was throwing hard at all, but I mean he put it on me on the side of that. Thing. So
I was a junior in high school, and I was not playing to my standards. There were some things going on, and there were some things going on with basketball for me, and I was getting ready to face some hard truths about basketball because I went on and played football and baseball in college. But I come home one night, and I was pretty down. And me and Dad sat there and talked. Dad wasn't even going to watch me play. He didn't go to the game that night. We sat there and talked, and I was pretty down on things. And Dad said, "There's lots of people that like to be able to play as good as you." And I said, "Nobody wants to play like me." And he said, and he had a card that you had given him at school. It was one of your little dribbler cards.
Yeah.
And on the back of it, it had Jeremy Durbin. It had your age. Favorite professional basketball player. You wrote Brian Alexander.
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
He gave that to me. You know, I had that till my house burned.
Really?
Yes, sir. It was somewhere in that house when my house burned.
Yeah.
So you pulled me out of a pretty rough night one night.
Oh, I told you when Kevin was in here with us. I told him, I said, Brian was always the basketball star. I remember you playing.
Kevin was a better basketball player
And
than I was.
you played with Tom Vincent.
I played with Tom. I played with a bunch of guys that were really great athletes. You know, I played with a lot of guys that went on and played big time sports. You know, Tom played at Vanderbilt. Todd Webb played at Western. Brian Browning played at Louisville. Tim Basil played at Louisville. I played with Neil Booker played at, I think, Austin Peay.
Austin Peay.
I played with a bunch of guys that went on and played big time. Those are all the guys that went on and played football. You know.
Where'd you said you played in college? Where'd you go to college?
I went to Campbellsville.
Campbellsville.
I went there. I played.
Yeah, that's where your dad went, right?
Yeah, Daddy went to school there, and I wasn't a very good football player. Jason was the best football player of all of us. Kevin, I think, was the best basketball player. But I was the best baseball player by far. The only game that Daddy and my brothers ever got to see me pitch in college, I pitched a no-hitter.
Really?
Yeah. The first game I ever pitched in high school was a no-hitter. That's a funny story that I'll tell some other time. But the only game that Dad ever got to see me, of course, Dad, y'all know Dad. Dad was old school. My dad never bragged on me. He told me he was proud of me one time in my life. But Dad was standing on that fence that day, and the last balls hit the right field, and they're on the first base just past the dugout over there. And both of my brothers are just jumping up and down because they know I got a no-hitter going. And Daddy's just standing over on the fence, and he turns and spits, turns back. When they caught it, he looked at me and just nodded his head, and that was it.
That's good enough.
That was the affirmation I got from Dad on that. Now, it wasn't that Dad didn't love us. I mean, but he didn't brag on us. He didn't want us to get the big head. Dad loved us so much. When we got sick, and me and Mom have laughed about this since Dad's been gone, if we got very sick, Dad would worry about us so much that he'd get sick himself. And then Mom would have both of us take care of it. But, I mean, there's nobody that ever loved their kids and loved other people's kids any more than Dad.
Charles was great to all of us. I mean, all three of us. But,
wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't stop with just us. You couldn't name a number on the people's lives he affected. So,
but I appreciate what you guys are doing, and y'all have all been great friends to me. You've come worked on my tractor and have worked on the air conditioning.
Yeah,
Bubs took care. Him and Jimmy have fixed everything. When I run into trees over on the back road, he has to go over there while I'm in the hospital and pack off the parts and call Brad and get them. And then of course Kyle impersonates all of us, and he takes me skiing and almost gets me killed.
Yeah.
I'm their brother, but I'm also their body double now.
Oh yeah.
Somebody mistook Brian for me the other day.
Really?
You would not believe.
How tall are you, Brian?
I was almost 6'4".
Yeah.
This is no lie. I'm at CB the other day, and this woman's standing in CB, and she goes out to her vehicle, and I'm in there 10 minutes, and I get groceries. Or getting lunch, and I'm coming. Of course, I'm diabetic, and I eat tuna fish and lettuce every day, all day long.
Yeah.
But I'm coming back out, and this woman gets out of her truck and walks over to me, and she said, "Did y'all ever figure out what she's going to do about them taxes on my deed?" And I looked at her and I thought, "Ma'am, you've got me mixed up." I started to say, "I'm not. You think I'm Kevin Alexander?" And before I could get that out, she said, "Well, you're Kyle White, ain't you?" I thought, "Ma'am, I'm way too tall to be Kyle White."
Got a lot more hair on.
Do you not see this? I mean, I know it's jumping back a little bit, but I got more right up here, And I just looked at her and I said, "Ma'am, no." I said, "I'm Brian Alexander. I work over here at the Board of Education." She said, "Oh," and just gets in the truck and walks off.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, it's hard. Of course, people get me and my brothers mixed up all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I can't ever go to the grocery without getting asked about car taxes.
You should have said, "I think we're going to double those taxes." Just roll the window up.
Well, that's what I said. She's probably thinking, "He don't want to fool with me. He's
I tell
acting
you
like
what,
he's somebody
I
else."
should have just said, "You go get your husband and come down here to the PBA office and we'll just fight it out."
We'll just see who's the big dog.
Yeah. So what made you go into teaching? What drove that? Was it both parents teachers or?
Yeah, I was the only one that was evidently didn't have enough sense not to stay out of education.
Yeah.
I was the only one that wound up doing it. I went to college. I majored in accounting for a while, believe it or not. And then I figured out that was way too boring for me. And I didn't want to sit around and crunch numbers all day long. I wanted to coach. Mm-hmm. I wanted to coach. So I went into business education. And when I got out of college, I actually ran a construction company in Bowling Green for 3 years before I started teaching school. I got out in the right before Christmas in 1992, and I went to work for a guy in Bowling Green. I worked right across from Jody Richards Elementary, right there at Hidden River Subdivision.
Yeah,
it was nothing but the old Borders Dairy Farm at that time. I put a sewer line in. I taught myself to lay sewer lines. I ran a sewer line all the way to Nashville Road, Warehouser out there, and that was the first sewer line that was out in that area out there. I did that for 3 years. And I got tired of freezing to death all winter and burning up all summer. I mean, that was the coldest place I'd ever been to with a tree in a 600-acre field out there, and I was freezing to death. Mm-hmm. So I went in. I started at Warren Central, and I'll never forget the first day at Warren Central. I walked in the classroom. I looked around, and I walked back out in the hall, and I thought, what? I said to myself, what have you got yourself into? Mm-hmm. And I had to gather myself up a little bit, girded up, and walk back in, started teaching, and this is my 30th year. I'm starting my 30th year in education. Of course, I only taught about 6 years. Of those 30 years, 24 of them have been in administration.
So I remember you. I don't remember what year it was. I graduated in '98 from Evanston County,
mm-hmm.
and you were teaching it was typing then.
Yeah.
And Miss Fulkerson had been my typing teacher.
Yeah,
and,
I got her job when she retired.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's probably one of the most useful skills that I picked up in high school. I mean, every day. I sit in front of a computer most of the day, every day, and I spend a lot of time typing. And I look around at my coworkers. They're over there packing, pack typing, and I can sit there and I'm like, I'm glad I learned this.
Did you learn it on those old blue and red?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
And when time was up, she would hit the master switch on the wall, and they'd go whoo, and just shut off.
Well, let me tell you this. I had Miss Huffman, Helen and Dale Huffman lived up here at Bay Spring. And if you didn't use that paper release, it sounded like you was ripping the guts. It sounded like you was ripping a rear end out of a vehicle. So I would sit there and catch Miss Huffman with her head turned, and I'd get a hold of that paper, and I'd yank it out, and she'd turn around, and I'd be looking right at the person sitting across from me. She'd go over there and just rip them a new one. I'd wait till they was taking their paper out, and they're over there just being just careful as they can. I'd rip mine out, and I'd just turn and look at them real hard. She'd go over there and just rip them. I got by with that till Christmas.
Angie Summers, I guess she's married to Jeff Basham down here.
Teaches over Grayson County now.
Right, yeah. So Angie and I sit beside each other. If you remember, those typewriters were like there were two right beside each other in a row. There weren't a big row of them. And so Angie and I sit beside each other, and I paid attention for about 2/3 of the class, and I don't know what struck me, but the last third of the class I didn't pay attention, and I would go in there and sleep, and she would elbow me and wake me up, and I'd be like, I ain't doing it. And so still this day, she's like, I don't know. You slept most of the class and got the same grade I did. I said, Miss Fulkerson just liked me. That's all it was.
Maybe you were just that fast a typer.
Yeah.
You got your work done the first 2/3, and then it was over.
But we had
overachiever.
We had a lot of good time, and high school was fun.
High school.
Looking back, it was fun.
It was fun.
I enjoyed my time in high school so much that I went back to it and didn't leave for the longest time. I've spent a great deal of my life right over there at that school. Seen a lot of changes. As the old cowboy said one time, I've seen a lot of changes, and I've been against almost every one of them. But there's been a lot of changes. Some things for the good and some not so good. But
you were at the helm through COVID, navigated through COVID.
It's the first 2 years I was superintendent. That's all I did was deal with COVID, and then since then I've had to learn I've had a totally different learning curve. Of the 19 people that came in to be superintendents at the same time I did, 12 of them have already retired or went on to do something else or something like that. It's a lot of pressure. There was a lot of pressure with that.
There's criticism coming from every direction,
and there was no learning curve for that. You just had to. It's mainly common sense.
Yeah, there was no handbook for it, right?
No,
I mean, it was a new thing.
You just had to do whatever was best for all parties involved, and safety was more important than any other part of it.
Right.
Yep.
Did I see y'all are going to replace Rock School?
We are. We are going to build a new school at Rock. Really excited about that. We're going to break ground on it next May, more than likely.
Will it sit to the north?
It'll sit right in front of where the old goalpost is up there right now.
Right.
It'll be, if you're standing in the middle of the road on 259, it'll be to the left of the current school. It'll be a showpiece. It'll be a state-of-the-art building, and I'm tickled to death for it. And then we're going to renovate. At the same time, we're going to renovate South Edmondson over there, and we're going to do away with the 5-6 Center at that time, because that was built in like 1958, 59.
Right, it was a high school at one time, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, it was the high school. It was the first high school when the schools consolidated.
Right.
Yeah, it sure was.
And then we went to middle school there.
When I was in 5th grade is when the current Rock School kind of got its add-on and that sort of thing.
What year was that?
I'm going to say about 91. Does that sound
see,
right?
I was
About
out of the.
91.
I had some bricks out of the old building at one time. I don't know.
Because we got to go over in the new part, but we didn't get classes in there.
See, I did.
Was you a year behind me, I guess?
Yeah.
We still actually have we have them stored somewhere. The old 2-story building, the front right there where it said Rock High School at the top, we still have those rocks, and we're going to incorporate those in the landscaping at the new school. We're going to do everything we can to keep all the history in that we can.
Right, there's a lot of history in that school.
Yeah, that's great.
It was the old school when I went, and then they tore it down. Which some of that school is still part of the old school that's there. But I think they built a new gym. That's where I remember your dad. Yeah. Your dad was a coach there, and a few of us got to hug the pole, and he
guilty.
He taught us how to put the backspin on the basketball, and the jump shots, and the old stage let down from the wall.
Oh yeah.
It was a neat place.
Of course, with this being the Sunfish thing, I can remember. Of course, I went to school at Sunfish for 15 minutes over here.
Well, I was going to ask you if you actually went down there.
No, I didn't, but I went for 15 minutes. I got a good story to go with that. When I was about 4 years old, of course, I wasn't in school yet, but Daddy let me ride the school bus. I rode his route, and I sat in that little tray on the left of the driver right there. I'm up there crisscross applesauce Indian style, a little bitty old thing, and I'm sitting there. And Daddy, first day of school, Daddy lets me ride to school with him. Mom's going to come up and pick me up. Mom's not working then. Mom couldn't keep a job because Jason would have an absolute crying breakdown fit if Mama got out of his sight. Mama had to be stay-at-home mom during that time. Shout out to you, Jason.
Love you, brother.
Kevin gave shouts out to Sarah.
Yeah.
I got to get a shout out or two into Jason because I know he's not going to come on here and take up for himself.
Yeah.
Because he just won't do that. But anyway, if y'all get Jason on here, that'll be interesting.
While you're on Jason, let me pause you here for just a second because I think Jason takes credit for your pitching career.
He does. Oh, yeah. Because
when y'all used to play baseball one-on-one.
We'd play baseball in the yard, and he'd bat first, and as soon as I got 3 outs on him, he'd quit. I'd never get to hit.
He said Brian would throw 100 pitches. He is hitting. To get it out, you had to hit the...
Oh, son.
We
had to hit the metal. We had
to
hit the clean out on the chimney, on the chimney on the front of the house.
Where the door is.
Yeah.
So if you hit that, that's an out. Of course... playing one-on-one, it took forever to get that. Jason said when he got 3 outs, he's like, I'm done.
Hey, we'd be fisticuffs out there in the yard, and Joanne, God bless her soul, she would come out of the beauty shop. She had a beauty shop right next door in that little outbuilding that used to be there.
Yeah.
She'd come out there, and so we wouldn't fight. She would come out there and pitch to me. Poor old Aunt Joanne, between her appointments, she'd come out there and pitch to me so we wouldn't fight. So Mama wouldn't come out there and whip us.
Let you get your bats in.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So I ride the bus that day, and I can remember just like it was yesterday, Daddy standing outside the gym over there talking to some people outside the old green gym over there. And I'm standing off over there, and I have a cousin whose name I will not mention, but he comes down the hill, and I think he was coming to talk to Daddy. He's crying. It's his first day of school, first grade. Mm-hmm. And I'm standing over there, and Daddy's busy over there talking. He walks over to me, and he said, I don't like this. And he's crying. He said, if I'm going to have to go to school, you are too. He's grasping me with the other hand, and we take off up the hill, and we go in Miss Tiny Durbin's trailer up there. Well, I walk in. She knows who I am. She just smiles at me and hands me a coloring sheet. I go to the back of the trailer back there, and I'm sitting back there just coloring just as hard as I can go. I'm back there about 15 minutes. I seen Daddy poke his head in. I seen him smile, and he said, you better come on with me. Miss Tiny said, well, he can color as good as the rest of them. You might as well let him stay. Daddy said, no. Said his mama's going to come be looking for him. So I got to go to school at Sunfish for 15 minutes. But I tell you what, I remember going to ball games up there. See, even up to the time that I was in middle school, when Kyrock and Brownsville played when I was a little kid at school, they played during the school day.
Yeah.
And I remember being at a game up there one day, and I just remember a small snippet of this. Either Calvin or Alvin Holt was taking the ball out of bounds, the part that I remember. But they had them black jerseys on and them black and gold pinstripe pants, man. I tell you what, they were sharp.
Yeah.
But if y'all were ever in the old gym, you know the beams that were in the gym in there that upstairs?
Yeah.
Kids would walk out on those beams and sit on those beams with their
talking
legs
down
dangling
here
down.
over at Kyra?
No, right up here at Sunfish.
Yeah, I remember those big wood laminated beams had bolts though.
Yes, they would walk out on those beams and sit there. The older kids would sit up on. Now that was a cool thing to do, was to sit out on them beams.
Yeah.
But when that place was packed. It'd be loud. Kyrock was the same way when Kyrock and Brownsville played when I was a kid. But then I can remember also, Dad would pick the hottest day of the summer, and now we hire companies to come in and refinish the gym floor.
Right.
Daddy would we would go up there, and when you walked in the old gym, the drink machine was right there on the right. Daddy would take us over there, and there's only 3 rows of bleachers over there by where his office was. He'd put us on the top row and tell us, don't you move. And of course, as y'all know from the bicycle story from Kevin, whatever Dad told me to do, I did.
Yeah, it's long.
But Dad would go in there with a squeegee and a bucket of gym seal, and he would seal that floor, and it'd be so hot in there you couldn't breathe. And Daddy just sweat, just pouring off him. But he did the floor himself.
Really?
Sure did.
One thing I hadn't thought about in years till you was telling that story. When I was in 5th grade, Coach would let me dust mop the gym floor.
Oh, you dust mopped that after every class.
And there was only one way that you dust mopped
Yes, sir.
it. Down and back.
Yep.
Shake it out. Down and you didn't shake it at each end. You went down and back.
I
but then
remember dust mopping the
did you
floor.
get to do it some?
Uh-huh.
But I mean, if you tried to do that no, that ain't the way you do it.
Listen.
You go all the way down and all the way back, shake it out, and then that way you dust is all at one end, and then you got it all.
And if
right
you
there.
didn't do it the way he said,
Oh yeah.
now what did I tell you? I can just hear Daddy right now. Now what did I tell? Is that the way I told you to do it?
I remember sometime if we got in there and it hadn't been dust mopped before we could play, we would all sit on there, and one kid would get out there
And dust
Oh,
mop.
yeah.
dust mop, and
Yeah.
we'd sit there and wait
Watch-
for him.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
yeah. But Dad, of course, as Kevin said, you know, Dad, he loved being at Sunfish. And I'll tell you a story that Kevin didn't know. Right before they closed the school over here at Sunfish, they called Dad over to the board office, the guy that was superintendent at the time, and told him about a year ahead of time, said, you're going to Brownsville. Dad said, I don't want to go to Brownsville. He said, no, said, you're going to Brownsville. Said, if I tell people that you're going to Brownsville, they won't fight as hard to keep this school open. So, but Dad would have, he would have talked there till the day he hung it up.
Right.
You know, he had left and gone to the high school, and that didn't work. Dad liked being at junior high. I've always said my dad was the greatest coach that nobody ever heard of, you know, outside of a small area.
Right.
And he had chances to go other places. There was the guy they went to the last year they had school over here. Dad wasn't very happy because they were closing the school, and deep down, Dad thought one of the reasons they closed the school was because he was beating the hind end off of these other schools in the county, and they didn't like it.
Yeah.
Can't beat them, shut them down.
Yeah.
He had a 7th grade team. Jack Duval right up here was on it. Calvin and Alvin Holt, Steve Alford, Todd Booth. Todd used to lead the team out, and Todd could dribble the ball with his knees. And he called Todd Boozy. He said, lead us out, Boozy. and Todd could dribble the ball with his knees. I remember, I have a memory of that from the county tournament that last year. But they went to a tournament up here at Horace Branch and just beat the socks off everybody. Dad said they had the best full court press of any 7th grade team he'd ever seen.
Really?
And the coach at Ohio County tried to get Dad and Mom to move up there, and I didn't know until me and Mom were talking recently. He had a chance to go to Christian County and be a coach there. He had a chance to go to Butler County. He had a chance to go to Grayson County. But Dad never wanted to move away from where we were.
We're glad he stayed.
That was home. Dad didn't need any notoriety. He didn't need any publicity or anything like that. He told me one time, he said, I like coaching junior high kids. Said, I see more growth in junior high kids. He said, high school kids a lot of times don't improve as much. He said, I like to see kids grow.
Right.
And
there's a lot of truth to that. I mean,
that was his explanation for it, and he was tickled to death.
He get 110% out of kids too.
Oh,
He was an unbelievable motivator.
Absolutely.
He motivated us a lot at the house. You know, he did that sometimes with a belt. But you know, my kids they sleep way more than they ought to. But there was no sleeping past 8 o'clock living in Charles Alexander. I mean, you're out of the bed.
He's old school too.
Y'all get up. He'd be out there sharpening the hoe. We'd be chopping thistles. We'd be doing this, doing that. You know, one of the things, you know, that I when I was 11 years old, we owned the B&B Market for about 2 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we owned it for about 2 years, and I was 11. Jason was about 9.
What was it called then?
Alexander's Grocery.
Alexander's Grocery.
Now, right before that, Nick and Evelyn owned it before they started the corner market, and it was C&K Super Saver. And then when they sold it to Mom and Dad, it was Alexander's Grocery. And then we sold it to Gladys and Jim Miller, and it was Gladys.
Gladys is my
when I was
growing up.
And then, but we owned it for about 2 years. Interest was 20% at that time, and gas was $2 a gallon. And Daddy decided that one summer that we wasn't going to plow tobacco with a tractor. And me and Jason plowed tobacco with horses.
Really?
Yes, sir, we sure did. And we had old mare that had been my Papaw Cecil's, old Martha. And we had they was both white. And we had an old gelding that we'd bought from the Dillard DC boat.
Yeah.
And I plowed with old Tom, the one we got from D, and Jason plowed with Martha, and we plowed all that tobacco. We had 2 strawberry harrows, and Daddy would haul the harrows from place to place, and he'd jump the horses in the truck, or we'd ride them from patch to patch, and we plowed all that tobacco with a horse. And old Tom, he got stepping on the plants one day. Daddy said, take that check line, and said, stripe his hind end. I said, I don't want to whip him. He said, you either whip him or I'll bust yours. I thought, you ain't taking that check line to my hind end. Buddy, I warmed old Tom up.
Sorry,
Tom.
He
didn't step on the plane the rest of the year.
Yeah.
He never stepped on
Better
another
you than me, Tom.
But, I'm 55 years old, and there ain't very many people 55 years old that plowed tobacco with a horse or a mule.
Right. You know, I'm short of being around some Amish. I've never seen anybody do it. Have you, Brandon? I mean, you still see some Amish every now and then.
I mean, we did it that one summer, and we never did do it after that. But
didn't you tell me a story about the horse that y'all got from D that he told y'all?
That was that one. That's that old white one. Don't be
riding?
on him, son. We rode the far out of him.
Charles
Had white
come in
hair
and
all
caught
over
y'all.
my pants. Oh, he didn't like that. Yeah, comes in there, pair of pants. Hey, where'd this white hair come from? I don't know. I don't know. Hey, we did. Listen, we put Daddy through a lot. I tell you what, I'll tell you this, and of course, when we was plowing tobacco with tractors, we had that 135 that's down there that I've got now. I mean, Daddy bought a 135 in 1976 there at the Dr. C. Huff Company. I don't know how there was a Massey Ferguson on the place with all that orange Alice Chalmers down there.
Somebody traded in on a good tractor.
Hey, at the time on the creek down there, their daddy he was a Republican and had a Massey Ferguson tractor. He stuck out like a sore thumb in Big Reedy because they's all Democrats and Huffs and Woosleys driving Alice Chalmers.
That's Alice Chalmers.
But that's the Alice Chalmers country, boys.
Yeah.
But we had that, and then I think Edward Woosley lives over there where the Clarks live now. He had a Red Belly Ford, I believe, that he let us use to drive. And either Daddy didn't know it had high and low range, or Daddy didn't tell us it had high and low range. I can't remember which one it was. But Larry Smith showed us where it was. And we'd get out of the driveway, and we'd get out ahead of Daddy. Of course, I've been driving a tractor on the road since I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
We'd get out ahead of him, son, And I'd reach down there and I'd put that thing in high range, and here we'd go. That thing would fly. It'd lap at Massey Ferguson, and that front end looked like it had palsy. I mean, it was just shaking. It was all over the place. And I remember one day me and Mom was talking about that earlier. I got out in front. I got out and thought I was going to get to the tobacco patch, and I looked behind me. There's Daddy behind me. I geared her back. I banked her back down. I pulled in. He whipped it in the truck right behind me. How'd you get that tractor to go so fast?
What's the matter with this
I said,
thing?
I put it in high range up there. How'd you know that was there? I said, Uncle Larry showed me. That was the last year we used that tractor. They wasn't going to fix the front end on it for sure.
Yeah.
But I tell you what.
Did you all ever farm over at Winston and Jean's any with them? Did y'all help them
Oh,
with tobacco
yeah,
over there?
we all worked together. Now, I will say this. Dad was notorious for having the worst tobacco beds in the world. So what Daddy would do is we would help everybody else. We'd help Billy and Shirley get done, and then we'd go over I spent a lot of time at Winston and Jean's.
Yeah.
Because me and Darren were...
Was Jean's your aunt?
Jean was my daddy. Jean was Daddy's youngest sister, and Darren, their son that got killed, he got killed in a car wreck when he was 23. Darren was a month older than me. We were the same age. Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize you were that
Listen,
close.
we did everything together.
Yeah.
We did everything together. So we would go over there and we would help Winston finish setting his tobacco, and then we would go in and get to use their tobacco plants. Whatever they didn't pull, we would pull them. I got a couple of good stories on Darren here in a minute. I got to tell on me and him. But one year we had to, of course, y'all know where Mom and Dad lived. We would drive all the way to Hart County High School and went 10 miles past Hart County High School for 2 weeks. We drove over there, and we would get over there at daylight, pull plants till noon. And then when we would leave, we would stop at the Dairy Queen right there by Wigwam Village.
Yeah.
And we'd eat hamburgers, and we would sleep on the bed, in the bed of the truck on top of them tobacco plants. And Daddy would drive through the park, and we'd sleep right there. And then when we'd get back to the house, we'd clean plants, he'd disc a field, and we'd plant. We'd
dark.
set tobacco till after dark.
Yeah.
And then get up the next morning, 4 o'clock, start again.
Yeah.
But me and Darren were the same age. We were setting tobacco one time, and we didn't get county water over there where we live until probably it was the summer between my junior and senior year of high school, and Darren had already graduated. So we're over there in the yard of the old house where I grew up, and we'd been setting tobacco, and me and Darren standing there talking, and we see a blue truck, a S10, go down the road, and one guy's driving, and the other one's hanging out the window looking out down the side of the road. So we kind of looked at each other, and that looked weird. Well, they stopped right there at the end of the driveway, and the guy comes up the hill, pulls the water meter up, writes down some numbers, goes back down and gets in the truck, and they go on down the road. Well, how did he know to stop there? So we walked down there to the road, and down there at the road, there was a blue arrow at the side of the road.
They had it marked.
Where they knew where the water meters were.
Yeah, lined it up.
Yeah, so me and Darren got talking. We went and bought us a can of blue spray paint, and we started adding arrows on the side of the road. Anywhere we could see a bluff or a briar patch on the side of the road.
Meter here.
I bet we drew 50 arrows on the side of the road. It wasn't long after that, about a month later, Mama sticks her head out the door and said, Darren's on the phone, wants to talk to you. Of course, that's a big deal because they had a Grayson County number.
Right.
So he called me long distance. Yeah. So I run in there and got the phone. He said, hey, they're checking water meters. I said, come get me. We drove around all afternoon and watched them. They would drive down the road. They'd get to one of them marks, and they'd get out, and they'd look. And there'd just be a briar patch on the side of the road. I seen them get down. They'd be down like beagle hounds crawling in there. And
I don't remember this one last month.
Yeah, they didn't remember that. So my other Darren Davis story, me and Darren, of course, we played softball together. We did everything together. You know, he played Little League baseball down here. You was talking about Little League baseball earlier. He played Little League in Evanston County on my teams.
Okay.
Because Winston Jean was busy. They had a slaughterhouse at that time in Clarkson.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, Darren played, we'd go get Darren, and Darren did everything with me. But when I was going to Campbellsville, I would leave the house early sometimes and stop, and he'd be up there on a Sunday afternoon. I'd go back to school on Sunday, and he'd be up there, and people would be bringing in stuff, whatever they wanted killed, and he'd be there putting in stalls and everything. He'd be there by himself, so I'd stop in. We'd stand there and tell stories and talk and spit and poke and all that kind of stuff, and try to stay away from Marion. But
Survive.
I went in there one day,
Survive.
and we stand there talking. He said, I've got one more guy coming, said he's bringing about 6 hogs. So that guy comes in, it's an old man, and he backs up there, and about 3 of them hogs right there on the back of their hams, they was cut and they was oozing blood. And he unloaded them, and we run them in there, and I said, what in the world happened to them hogs back there? They're oozing blood. He said, I don't know. Said, I've never seen that before. So he said, I'm going to ask him. So he come in there and they fill the ticket out, and then Darren, nice way, he said, hey, mister, said, what happened to the back of them hogs' legs? He said, my shocking stick ran out of juice and I couldn't get them loaded. Said, my wife brought me the weed eater. He'd run them on the trailer with a weed eater. I mean,
That's not the only time that happened. Jill had a lady bring some hogs up there one time that had all striped up and cut up that had that happen too. So I mean, yeah.
Of course, I got to tell one on Marion. Of course, I go up there.
Wait, is this G rated?
Yeah, it is. It
Okay.
is. Both. I can actually tell 2 stories on him that's G rated. But Marion, big shout out to you there, buddy. I walk in up there one day, and he walks up to talk to me, and he just gets right up on me, and he's standing there talking to me, and what I don't know is he's got a squirt bottle down there, and he's squirting my crotch with water, and it looks just like I've wet my pants. And it just flew all over me. So he's going in and out of the freezer, and I get the squirt bottle in a minute, and I catch him going in there, and I filled his ear full of water. And he goes in there, and he's moving stuff around. He comes out, and he's hitting himself on the side of the head. That water had froze up in his ear in there. So that happens, and then, of course, I worked with Marion, and he was good when me and Jason, when we was young, and I mean, we was working. I worked construction in the summer just so I could make more money, and I didn't have I had to go to school full time, and in the summers, whoever he was working for, he's working for Heritage part of the time and Alliance part of the time, but he had a company truck, and he'd let us ride with him. But, it was almost worth driving yourself, not riding with him, because if you went to sleep in the mornings or the afternoons, he would drift off the road, get right over, and then jerk it back, and your head would hit the side window. Just kapow. So, and the other thing he liked to do...
Is that where he got the nickname Andretti? Or?
Nah, he drove... Well, I don't know. I don't know where that came. I think my dad gave him that. But he would also... You'd be driving down the road, and if you fell asleep, he would just start jerking it back and forth and screaming like he was having a wreck.
Yeah.
Now, I was not in the truck, but there is a guy from Sunfish that had been in a significant wreck that was about my age. And he pulled that stunt on him one time, and this old boy had PTSD. I reckon by the time he got done, he had ripped the dash off the truck, the company truck. And they had to go in and have that truck repaired. I reckon he had a full-blown meltdown,
Huh?
had a flashback, and tore that truck apart.
You already lived with Marion.
I cannot imagine. I
lived
cannot
with him
imagine.
For, I don't know, probably a year or so there while I was in school. Man, it was something all the time. And still this day, you go on vacation with him or something. I mean, it's a ride.
Well, I tell you what, you had talked about on an earlier episode about, when y'all stayed up there that week and how y'all didn't get the chance to clean the house up. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you something. That night that we went skiing, it couldn't have been no different than that trailer that used to be right over here across from the mall.
Yeah.
Kyle calls me one night about 8 o'clock. I mean, I'm laying on the couch about to fall asleep.
Yeah.
Hey, big boy, what you doing? I said, I'm laying here on the couch. What's up, son? He said, hey, there's a bunch of us going to go skiing up at Paoli tonight, going on a midnight run. Come up and go with us. So
Best offer he had,
listen, I didn't have it. Yeah, I mean, I was single at the time.
Yeah.
That's happened to me more than once.
Yeah, it happens.
But anyway, Josh, Jared, and Kyle, I think, were living in the trailer at that time. Is
Yes,
that right, Kyle?
That's right. Uh-huh.
So we're all gathering up. There's
Josh
two
had the little bedroom. Jared's on the far end.
There was 2 carloads of people that went up there. I wind up in the car. I think Kyle was driving a SUV, a Ford Explorer or something at that time. Something like that. Anyway, I went in the bathroom before we left to use the bathroom, and in that trailer, The toilet's here, the shower's over here, and there's a pile of clothes over here between the toilet and the shower. And it had mushrooms growing about 6 inches tall. Where they had all that cow manure on them, they just throwed them over there. And I thought to myself, Maxine ain't been in this trailer. She wouldn't allow that to go on.
To be fair, that was the guest bathroom. That was not my bathroom.
We go to Paoli up there, and I'd never been skiing before, nor have I been since.
Yeah.
I get up there, and I never had a pair of skis on in my life. I don't think Jeremy Logan had either. I had enough sense to get 2 skis and 2 sticks. Jeremy gets a snowboard. I'm over here on the bunny slope, and I can't stand up. And I'm laughing at myself. But I took a pair of old Liberty bib overalls. I didn't know that when you fell down in that stuff, it's like rolling around in a slush puppy.
Yeah.
That wasn't really snow. It's just a bunch of slick mess over there. It's about like a slush puppy. Jeremy goes off the hill over there on that snowboard, and he gets down in a holler, and it took 12 people to get him out.
They was laid down with their ski poles out and trying to reach him.
Pole to pole pulling him out. I thought they was going to have to get the Paoli jaws of life over there to get him out of that holler. Well, he comes out of there, and in the nicest way possible that I can say it, he proclaims that he's done skiing for the night.
Yeah.
And he talks me into going back to the lodge with him. We're going to hang it up. We've had all the fun we can stand. Of course, when I think of a ski lodge, what do you think of? I think of a roaring fire.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Cozy.
Listen, it's about like the high school lunchroom over there, and it's about 50 degrees in there. And we're sitting back to back in there for the rest of the night, just teeth chattering. I get in the car, and I said 4 words. I said, turn that heat up. And I went to sleep. Kyle woke me up when we got back to Sunfish.
So I've been one time skiing to Paoli. I've been in Colorado once, with actually tubing out there, but one time to Paoli, and I went with Jill and Marion. And so, like you, I'd never had skis on. And so I get my skis on, and I go down the bunny slope. But I did not realize the bunny slope was only 30, 40 yards long. Mm-hmm. And then it's a sheer drop on what they call the family trail, which is a bad name for it because there's nothing family-oriented about it.
Blue Diamond.
So down I go, and at the bottom, right before the chairlift, it makes a 90-degree turn, and I went straight off in those woods.
And that's probably about where I think that's where Jeremy got.
Hey, it was mud. I mean, I looked like I'd been rolling in the barn lot.
Oh, yeah.
And so I get back up, get back top of the hill. Marion and Jill are there. Marion, of course, Marion and Jill both are good skiers. I mean, they ski a lot, or used to ski a lot. So Marion says, you just need to go down the Blue Diamond. It's a straight shot to the bottom. It's easier. And I take off down there, and at the bottom of that hill, the Blue Diamond and the Black Diamond intersect. They come out the same spot. And I'm going so fast at the bottom of the Blue Diamond, I don't know what to do, so I turn, and I go up the hill about 30 or 40 yards onto the Black Diamond. And I stop, and I'm like, oh, I've got it. And then I start going backwards. And so I go backwards down through the snow fence off into the creek. And Jill and my I guess Amber and I were dating at the time, or on the ski. They see it all from the chairlift, and I'm laying down there in the water, and I'm like, I'm done, and I'm never go. And so when Lindsay and the kids wanted to go out to Colorado, we were out there like, oh, we need to go snow skiing. I'm like, no, I'll get on a tube, but I'm not skiing.
I don't. You could never get me to go back again.
I'm glad when you called me to go to Paoli with you, was looking at alignment right, not to go skiing after hearing these stories.
Couple of tidbits on that ski trip that Brian's talking about. So Lump, he does make it to the bottom of the hill finally, but he's scared of heights.
Yeah,
and will not ride the chairlift back up.
How do you get back up there?
Walked.
Oh my God!
You know those boots that clamp in around your shin that won't let your ankles turn? He packs that snowboard and walks up that hill
in those boots.
In those boots for an hour or something
when
like
he
that.
is done.
He said, "I'm done. I'm over with." Well, I had went skiing one other time, and I didn't know much about it at all. But on the way up, a couple of the guys that we went with the first time told me, said, now, if you get to going too fast, just cross your skis. That don't work. That just makes you...
I was getting ready to say, you got to be able to hold them crossed not let them do that.
Yeah, you got to make them get up on their edge. So they didn't give me a real good instruction, but after one time, you're quite a bit better. But I get over there where that chairlift is that you're talking about below that bunny slope, and I get in a little duck pond there. You know, by each one of those pillars, it just kind of banks down to it.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to ski out of that, up that bank, and I'm not proficient enough to ski up out of that bank.
You're just spinning.
And I'd get
spinning
2/3 of the way up it, and I would just go back down that duck pond. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, but I get panicked. And I'm like, what if I can't get out of here?
Lost forever.
Yeah, forever. Just, and my friends are just 30 yards right over that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm giving it to it. I boom, 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 and I can't get out. Well, off in the distance, I hear somebody going, I thought, is somebody hollering at me? And I turn around and look, and there's probably this 10-year-old on the chairlift coming up. And I can just barely hear him. And as he's getting closer, I'm like, he's looking at me. So I kind of pull my toboggan up and whatever. He's saying, take your skis off. It had never dawned on me in that 15 minutes that I was trapped to take my skis off and just walk up out of there. And this little 10-year-old kid's going, take your skis off.
So when I was up there.
You talk about feeling that tall.
When I went to the bottom of that blue diamond and up the black diamond, there was somebody there, and they said, next time just fall. Yeah. If you can't stop, just fall. Yeah.
Right.
I tried that. Oh, it was.
You'll end up with your knee bent
I was
backwards.
getting ready to say, I think I had to walk the rest of the way down the hill because my ski did not stop the next time. I mean, it went all the way to the bottom of the hill. And when I did fall, I took out 3 other people. Got any last closing remarks?
I appreciate you boys allowing me to be part of this.
Hey, this has been fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
I appreciate what y'all do, and like I said, y'all have all been good friends to me. Brandon, I call Brandon. You've come over and fixed, like I said, my air conditioner on my tractor, and I enjoy the fact that Kyle impersonates every member of my family except Sarah.
We may have to get him a wig.
If you start dressing up in a dress, I don't.
Maybe I'll go for RB.
Yeah, huh?
Maybe I could go for RB.
Gonna have to dye your hair.
Well, you might be able to pass for RB. I tell you what, I don't know if you can detail a car that good.
No, I guarantee I couldn't.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.